that, I would like to introduce Catherinne Pedreros. Are you here?
Good afternoon.
Yes. Hello,
yes,
Catherinne.
I'm here.
So,
Hello.
yeah, Catherinne Pedreros is a lawyer with more than 20 years of experience on human rights and international humanitarian law, and currently is a senior human rights officer at the Secretariat of the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, where she supports the committee's work on inquiry procedures, reviews of states party periodic reports, and general comments, including the general comment number 5 on the right to live independently and being included in the community. As our first speaker this afternoon, she will talk about personal assistance and deinstitutionalization under the convention. So, thanks for Catherinne.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much, Etienne, Lawrence, and the organizers of this online conference. This afternoon, I'm very pleased and very grateful with you, with the Coordination Handicap Autonomie, the Autonomie in France, and the European Network on Independent Living for having invited me to take part in this conversation and this exchange with you and persons with disabilities in France. Today's program includes critical aspects to understand better the role and modalities of personal assistance and its connection to several rights in the Convention, but of course to the right to live independently and being included in the community. This morning, you already discussed practices in different countries in Europe, and I'm very pleased to present and hold an exchange with you about the jurisprudence and recommendations of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I have had the opportunity to follow and support the work on the committee in the last years, in particular its discussions to prepare a general comment on Article 19 of the Convention, which is known as General Comment number 5, and the process of regional consultations to prepare the committee's guidelines on the institutionalization, including in emergencies. Those two documents are today the basis of this presentation and this exchange, and I hope you will find it useful. So my main message today would be that personal assistance is one of the main measures to accomplish the right of autonomy, freedom of choice, equality, and inclusion in the community of persons with disabilities as recognized in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Once we study Article 19 and its links, its relationship with other articles in the Convention, it allows us also to have the link and to realize about the link between personal assistance as a way to facilitate and to make possible this freedom of choice and respect of autonomy, equality, and inclusion in the community. Having said that, I'm stressing that the connection or how to think about personal assistance should be framed by these different rights and the goal of the Convention, which is to dignify persons with disabilities, to ensure that they are recognized as subjects of rights and that they exercise in complete freedom their rights. Then we will have and we will better understand some of the features of personal assistance in line with the Convention. If you allow me, I will refer to some specific ideas that the committee has presented in these documents, and that it has reiterated throughout its different recommendations to the state parties to the convention, including to France. So these ideas are based, as I was explaining before, on the general comment number 5 and the guidelines on deinstitutionalization. And the first one is that personal assistance refers to person-directed or user-led human support available to persons with disabilities as a tool for independent living. So this is a key idea for the committee that considers that personal assistance should be directed and led by the user of personal assistance. Although the committee realizes and is not very keen in using the word user, but in this case, it is only to explain that is the persons with disabilities having or requesting personal assistance, though they are the ones who really should lead the way in which personal assistance is provided. So this is the first key point that the general comment underlines and explains. And then the committee explains how this personal assistance, which is user-led or person-directed, should be first funded on the basis of personalized criteria and taking into account human rights standards for decent employment or decent work. So this means that personal assistance should not be like standardized, like a standard service, but it should be financed and funded also on the basis of personalized criteria. And that, of course, this entails a work relationship which should respect and should be in line with the standards of decent employment. The funding, says the committee, should be controlled by and allocated to the person with disability. Why the committee explained this, or why the committee referred to the fact that the funding should be controlled and allocated to the person with disabilities? Because in different systems or regimes which were established before the convention, generally the funds and the allocation of personnel for providing personal assistance is not on the basis of persons with disabilities, but is on the basis of service and service provision. So the convention really changes this perspective or this view of personal assistance from being a service in which persons with disabilities should fit in this service and the circumstances in which service providers allocate personal assistance, to a model in which is a person with disabilities, which defines the model, the requirements, the extent, the intensity of personal assistance, but also he or she controls the funds for the provision of personal assistance. A second point that is also very well explained by the committee is that the service must be controlled by the person with disability, meaning that he or she can either contract the service from a variety of providers. Usually what the committee has observed is that in different state parties is one big service provider which organize a system of supporters or social workers, usually providing services for different persons with like standards which are general standards for the service, but not really taking into consideration individual requirements. So in the criteria of the committee, this situation should change, and therefore the service must be controlled by persons with disabilities. The third aspect that the committee mentions is that personal assistance is a one-to-one relationship, and therefore personal assistance must be or should be recruited, trained, and supervised by the person granted personal assistance. What I could have observed or witnessed during these years working with the committee members of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is that the relationship with their personal assistants is a close relationship, is a working relationship also, but is also a relationship in which the committee member trains and guides the personal assistants on how to better provide the assistance, what is the extent required, when they should be by their side, when they shouldn't be by their side, how to address like different situations such as bilateral meeting in which a committee member is participating, for instance, with a state party delegation, which is different from the role of a personal assistant in a plenary, in a meeting of a plenary of the committee, or during an informal gathering of committee members. So the role of the personal assistants throughout the day may vary also, and is the committee member who is guiding and who is requesting how to conduct this personal assistant, depending on the time, depending on the situation in which the committee member requires it. So for me, this is the best example I can provide of having witnessed how committee members work themselves with personal assistants. Another aspect of personal assistance that the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities highlights is that it should be there should be a self-management of service delivery, and persons with disabilities who require personal assistance can freely choose their degree of personal control over service delivery, according to their life circumstances and preferences, even if the responsibilities of the employer are contracted out. The person with disability always remains at the center of decisions concerning the assistance. Why the committee again underscored and expressed this in the general comment is maybe one could think that this is obvious, that it is autonomy, that personal assistants are like employees of persons with disabilities, and therefore the degree of control should be on the person with disabilities. But this is this could not be the case if a personal assistant doesn't have or doesn't recognize that will and preferences of persons with disabilities prevail. So to what extent, and the question is to what extent personal assistants are aware, and what are the measures, what are the means in which personal assistants can ensure that always preferences and will and preferences of persons with disabilities prevail, even in cases in which a person with disabilities experience an individual crisis, for example. So in this point, and how and why I think the committee considered it was very important to stress about self-management of service delivery is because the concept of freedom of choice and will and preferences is not necessarily very well understood and very well really accepted among service providers, among state parties or authorities trying to regulate the system of support. I also would like to say that it is not like one more idea or random idea that the committee included in this document. but that really the struggle, if I can use this word, or the fight for understanding that persons with disabilities have like legal capacity and the right to make decisions on equal basis with others is really ongoing. It is not necessarily understood or accepted by state parties. Even some state parties sign and ratify the convention declaring their understanding of Article 12 of legal capacity in a way which is restrictive of legal capacity of persons with disabilities, and therefore services and situations that are related to the exercise of legal capacity and autonomy are not necessarily in compliance with the convention. So I think it is a good reason for the committee to explain in detail all these features or characteristics of personal assistant. If I should summarize them, I would say is personal assistance should be person-directed, should respect will and preferences of the user or the person with disabilities requiring personal assistance. Also, the funding for personal assistance should be managed by the person with disabilities, and persons with disabilities should be in a position to choose from a range of services and not only to be subject to one service provider or to one type of personal assistant that is offered in the market or in the social work market. Something that is clear and that I would like to recall in this aspect is that the committee also referred to mandatory package solutions in which personal assistance is just one more service included in different services that are offered to persons with disabilities. So the committee is very clear in saying and affirming that mandatory packages solutions are not in which persons with disabilities are expected, for instance, to access this personal assistant by living in a congregated home or in a certain type of living arrangement. This would be contrary to the convention and violating Article 19, Article 12, Article 5 of the convention, in particular those rights related to freedom of choice and equality before the law and equal recognition before the law and de facto equality. So I think these would be the main points made by the committee in its general comment, and the committee reiterated this position in its guidelines on the institutionalization. If I may, just before explaining a bit more about the guidelines, is the committee during different constructive dialogues with the state parties to the convention received very positive assessments, self-assessments from state parties, in which state parties indicate that they are complying the convention because they are undertaking the institutionalization processes. So this is one fact, is the fact that the committee has received information indicating there are the institutionalization processes ongoing. However, the committee also received information from civil society indicating that these deinstitutionalization processes were really not ending institutionalization, but were changing the circumstances in which persons with disabilities were basically detained and living in congregated settings, especially from passing or moving persons with disabilities from psychiatric hospitals to small group homes, or from large institutions, residential institutions, to small congregated settings under the name of supporting houses or supported independent living. So the committee, if I would have to explain what is the role of the committee, is really to monitor and to assess the degree in which a state party which has obligated or committed itself to comply with the convention, the UN CRPD, is to assess the degree of implementation of how the state party is making progress. But it's not just that, it's how the state party is making progress, but how this progress involves participation of persons with disabilities, and how this progress also entails that all the system, the holistic view of the system of rights for persons with disabilities is being accomplished by the state party. And also is the duty of the committee to listen and to analyze the views and inputs and opinions of persons with disabilities through the representative organizations in all the procedures before the committee. So organizations of persons with disabilities are really playing a key role in bringing the committee's attention on certain matters that are not really complying with the convention and that could undermine the process of implementing the convention. So now, yes.
Yeah, just to say that we have 3 questions and already in 5 minutes, so maybe if that's okay, we can have some time to answer questions.
Perfect. So if I should like summarize the procedure of the guidelines on the institutionalization, really responds to the fact that persons with disabilities during COVID, persons with disabilities in institutions were in a position, in a higher risk of contracting COVID, of passing away also due to COVID. And there were no really responses for them. There were no specific systems to protect them against COVID, and even the measures to counter COVID were damaging to persons with disabilities. So the committee realized that the institutionalization should also take place during situations of crisis, and therefore personal assistance should be available once persons with disabilities are in a transition process from an institution to independent living. I would not refer specifically to the guidelines, because these guidelines are available, are different languages, are on French, so you could maybe read them directly in French. But what I can say is that the committee reiterated what it had presented in its general comment number 5, and provided some additional and more concrete guidance on how to implement this personal assistance as part of support systems once persons with disabilities are deinstitutionalized. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to listen to the questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. So first question is this convention only a guideline, or is it mandatory for signing signed parties, signed states?
Thank you. Thank you for this question. It's a mandatory document. It's a human rights treaty. It's one of the main human rights treaties which has been ratified or has been approved by more than like now from by 187 state parties, member states of the United Nations. The last state that committed itself to the convention is the state in the Pacific, is Solomon Islands, which sent its approval to the Secretary General last week. So it's 187 states which have approved, adopted, and made the convention part of its internal legislation, and therefore there are legal obligations unfolding the UNCRPD.
Thank you. Another question is, where can we find your conclusions in French?
So for the conclusions and recommendations of the committee made to France, they are already available in French at the committee's webpage. And what I can do is to provide here in the chat the link to the concluding observations, and also the link to the general comment number 5 and the committee's guidelines on the institutionalization. So all of these documents have been translated into French.
Thank you. And we can send them to all participants afterwards too. Another question and comment from one participant, so I'm reading it. I find that the general comments on Article 19 are too radical and are counterproductive. Do you really believe that can be applied to all people with disabilities? What about people who make the conscious choice to live in institution? Not all people with disabilities want to manage themselves their assistants.
Thank you for this question. And yes, the committee, when the committee makes a general comment, it is applicable to all persons with disabilities without discrimination. If a person with disability opts for living, like not benefiting him or herself from personal assistance, or for life in the community, then there is no there is no mechanism to really stop him or her from going to an institution, but to inform, to provide all the information which is available. Something that the committee has considered is that usually persons with disabilities and, for instance, family members also of persons with disabilities, parents of children with disabilities have opted for institutions due to the lack or absence of personal assistance and support in the community. So this situation in which is really an informed decision is really not the case, because before the convention and in absence of implementing the convention, really society does not offer a lot of opportunities of support in the community. So I think the work of the committee continues to be like promoting that this support in the community, which provides for independent living, is really being well understood and established and available for every person with disability.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm afraid we are out of time for more questions. So thank you. There's one more question that maybe we can send you afterwards, and we can provide the answer as well with the links we talked about. So yeah, again, thank you very much and for your time. Yeah, we'll go to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Etienne. I will remain with you for an hour if it is possible, and then I will leave.
Yeah, thank you.